spooky friends. My name is John. I'm your host, and welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest. And again, the great spooky guests continue on the podcast. Today is Kava from We Need to Talk About Ghosts podcast, correct?
That is correct. Yes. Well done. We're saying that because we've had a dry run through and
Yes.
we made a few flaws. So, like I was saying earlier, it's a play on the we need to talk about Kevin because my name's Kevin. So, drop the Kevin and add ghosts.
Yes, and you have 3 podcasts, correct?
That's right. Yeah, mate. That's so it's quite a busy schedule, really. So we've got we need to talk about Ghost, which is similar to your show in terms of how we view it. So it's again, like I was saying, it's not tongue in cheek because that's derogatory, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's just not a totally. It's open-minded, but not to the point that your brains fall out. So you can laugh at yourself, you can talk about the things without being deadly serious. Then, ironically, I have another podcast called The Dark Paranormal, which we focus on one listener experience per week.
Yeah.
And we do that in a very dramatically read style. But that's the point of it. And the reason between the two different personalities, if you will, is we need to talk about ghosts is me as you hear me now. The Dark Paranormal is also a side of me, so, as I'm sure it is with yourself, where you like to read about the darker side of the paranormal and, possessions and people getting thrown downstairs. So but that's all listener stories. It didn't start off as such. It started off covering like Amateurville and the usuals. Yeah. And then people started sending in their own stories, and 9 times out of 10, they were scarier. So we started doing them as long as they were long enough to do as one show. And more recently, we're halfway through season 1 of the Deadly Countdown, which is it's true crime, but with a lean towards the mysterious. So
yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, what's really funny is I've listened to Dark Paranormal and I didn't know that was you.
Well, there you go. Proves it's working then. Yeah, no,
it is working.
I have to do an almost received pronunciation accent with that because it's because obviously I'm from Liverpool in England and this is my natural accent as I speak now. But when I'm doing the Dark Paranormal, there are certain, you've got to have a certain nuance to your voice in terms of when you're trying to set up an action or for want of a better phrase, a jump scare.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't work if it's this voice going, and then when he went up the stairs, there was a bang. It's like, so you've got to be like,
right.
Suddenly when he was walking up the steps, that sort of stuff. You've got to become English. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing about that is you're absolutely right. I try to do some spooky things. So I have some voice changing things I have to do. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But it's fun, right? Because you at the end of the day, you want to scare people or make them think or make them laugh.
Yeah. I mean, and also there's an element of truth in what I'm saying with it. I mean, my interest in the paranormal's from a very young age, like we're talking 5 or 6. It's and it's been there as one of like my top 3 hobbies forever.
So let's get into that. Let's get into that, Kevin. What interests you in the paranormal? You kind of mentioned that. Why don't you expound on that a little bit?
So realistically, it was. I lost my mother when she was when I was going to say when she was 16. Christ, she would have been young. No, when I was 16. But up to that point, me and her, we were a family of 5. Mum, dad, 3 kids, and me and my mum were the ones who bonded over the paranormal. She was very much a believer. She was very much. She had a bit of a sixth sense about her, about certain things, and she would tell me, like even as a 5-year-old, like she'd be telling me terrifying stories about what's happened to her as a child, and it fascinated me as opposed to scare me, and she loved that. So we'd have really good conversations about the paranormal, and like for example, she to say a quick example, she said once before she married my dad, she was in a shoe shop in Liverpool city centre in the very early morning before she went to work, and was looking at a pair of shoes, and a woman on the other side, and she'd never met her mother. She died when she was 1. And this woman come from behind this other shelf and said, "Don't buy them, love. They won't suit you." And she was like, "Oh, okay," and put them back and started looking. And then she thought, "That's cheeky. Like, who goes up and says that to someone?" So she walked outside the shop, like literally 2 seconds later. This woman's nowhere to be seen. And she told me 2 aunties who were both much older than my mother. And they broke down and said, like, "You described your mum. That was your mum." So there was loads of little things like that my mother would do. Like, we used to try psychometry with each other, where I'd try and read her jewelry, to sometimes with good success, and some, we'd always be doing something. So there was always an interest there from a very young age. Like, one of my earliest memories is literally still being in junior school, and a hair drawing me a spooky castle on a blackboard that we had in the house. So there was. Whereas, like, my dad and my other 2 siblings, they're all into football or soccer, if you will, and they're just, like, when I say normal people, like, they don't dress in black and go around doing Ouija boards and stuff. But so and then ever since, like, I grew up, I was always interested. It read everything I could on it, and then the internet came along, and your world opened up.
So, you and me, Kev, are kindred spirits. My mom was the exact same way. So my mom had, and everyone laughs at me when I say this, my mom could meet a person, and this is not, I wouldn't say paranormal. My mom could meet a person and within a few seconds go, "That's a good or bad person." And you're like, "Okay, she's being judgmental." No, not at all. So when I used to go out with my girlfriends, I'd bring my girlfriend home, my mom would take one look at her, and then later she would go, "Honey, ain't gonna work out." She was never wrong, Kev. Never, ever, ever wrong.
But can I ask, was it 100% hit rate? Was it like every girl?
It was 100% hit rate. It was spooky. It was so spooky. My mom would meet my bosses, and she'd be like, "Honey, you got to quit this job." Like, what are you talking about, Mom? Trust me, you got to quit. A month later,
they're on the front of the paper.
Yeah, right. It's some crazy thing. And then she would read books about serial killers. She would read books about the paranormal. And then my mom would be like, I would ask my mom. So one of our, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's called the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. Did movies.
Funny enough, serendipitously enough, that's the latest episode of the Deadly Countdown. I've just released. It was released yesterday.
Check that, my friend. I have a great story for you about Ed Gein. I'm going to tell you this one really quick. Maybe you can get me on the show sometime if you'd like. But let me tell you about this, because this is a great one. So my mom's friend was the nurse. See, Ed Gein, near the end of his life, spent time in mental hospitals.
Yeah.
And my mom was the head nurse of the mental hospital Ed Gein was in. So,
no.
Truth, I swear on a stack of Bibles, I swear on your mother, the queen, whatever you want me to swear on.
Bloody hell.
So what she would do is, and I got more stories than this. So, I'm I guess I would love to be on your show. That's, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah, by all means.
So anyway, Ed, this is just a brief glimpse. This is, so Ed would be very, how do I say, moody. So my mom's friend would go in there, and Ed, if he liked you, he would have this creepy smile and he'd look at you. And if he didn't like you, he would give you this cold stare. And my mom's friend didn't take any shite or what he would say from this guy. So she would come in, and Ed would look at her, and she would go, "Ed, I ain't taking your shit today. It ain't happening." And she would not take it. And then Ed would kind of back down. Well, what happened really quickly is one day my mom's friend was on a business trip or something like that. And anyway, she comes back later, and she's like, hey, wait a minute, do you guys go and give Ed his medication? What's going on here? And they're like, oh yeah, the new nurse is in there giving Ed his medication. And she goes, oh my God, you do not send a new nurse in with Ed. So they're sitting there and she goes, how long has that nurse been in there? And they're like, about a half an hour. And my mom's friend is freaking out. She's like, oh my God. Well, the nurse comes out who had just been in with Ed, this new nurse comes out and she's all smiles and everything and she's laughing. And everyone's like, you okay? And they're like, she's like, yeah, well, what's the big deal? He's like my grandpa. And she's like,
Christ.
she's like, no. Do you know who that is? And she's like, Ed? And they're like, no, Ed Gein. And immediately this woman turns pale white and quits.
I'm not surprised.
She did not know. She spent a half an hour with one of the most sickest, twisted, he wasn't a cannibal, serial killers, who, yes, made lampshades out of people's skins, who made his chair out of people's skins. Yes. And
it was the light, was it a blind pull made of human lips? There was the one that got me.
Yeah, right?
Like,
right?
Nice guy.
So remember he used to babysit kids in the area. And so my story, if I'm going to be on your show, like I said, love to be on your show, I would tell you a story about a family who, just before Ed Gein was captured, Ed was babysitting their 3 children.
No.
Yes, just the day before he was captured, he was babysitting these kids. And
it's a weird one because he kind of, his MO did it seemed to be just, wasn't necessarily. I'm not saying they were safe, but his MO was seen to be a certain type of, due to his mother being so overbearing and all that carry on.
Yeah.
I don't think children were his target audience.
No.
I don't know how you phrased this right. But you know what I mean? I don't think that was his MO, but I'm not saying they were safe, but
no.
It's strange, it's worrying. You know what's an interesting thing, actually, staying on the and touching into what you're saying about your mother earlier as well.
Yeah.
Is a woman that my dad used to go out with said that when she moved into the house that she moved into, she held a housewarming party. And she said it was nice, blah, blah, blah. But then she said, this one friend come with another woman who she didn't know. Said, and this one woman she said she was cold when she walked in the door. She was like, as in like, you could tell she was like, her face was serious. Her eyes were darting everywhere. And she just sat on the windowsill of the house in the living room and didn't speak to anyone. And at one point in proceedings anyway, this lady like grabs this friend in the kitchen and says, who's the bloody weirdo that you've brought? And she went, oh, it's my sister-in-law. Like, she's just got out of hospital. It turns out she'd murdered a child.
Ooh.
She'd had a psychotic break. It's really sad, actually. It's just, when you just, there's a vibe.
Yeah.
She'd murdered a child, and then the child hadn't been found for a fortnight, and she'd been pushing the empty pram around, assuming there was someone in it, and picking up an empty bundle of rags, pretending it was a baby. And then when she was found and it was all sorted out, she was hospitalized and dealt with. But when some people can carry an aura, and it's perceptible. It's I mean, I've experienced it once where, that whole, you walk in a room, it's like in the olden days, you used to be able to walk, when they had certain types of TVs, you'd be able to walk in and you'd know if the TV was on, even if it was muted, because it give off a certain electric hum.
Correct.
And you have that when you walk into a room, if there's been an argument, that atmosphere in the air, that sort of thing. It's very rare. I don't think kids these days, when I say kids these days, I don't think people these days will be able to appreciate the reference, because modern TVs don't have that whole electrical situation. But you used to be able to tell. It probably says how dangerous the TVs were of the day. But if the telly was on mute, you'd walk in and you'd know because
Yeah,
there'd
yeah,
be an electric through your body,
yeah, yeah.
which
Like
was unhealthy.
radiation.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why we can all see in the dark.
Yeah, that's all we can see in the dark. Right. We glow a little bit. So,
Yeah, yeah.
there we go. Yeah, that's amazing. I also have a Jeffrey Dahmer story I could share too. If you're familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer at
Mm.
all, I can share that too. It is not my story. It is my cousin's story, who is in Milwaukee, who worked with Jeffrey Dahmer during his heyday. During the day he was eating people, I guess, and making sex slaves. And
Wow.
so I can talk about that too, which I'll be happy to help you and help your show, because those are unbelievable. To the heavy hitters, by the way, just really quickly, Plainfield is about 2 hours away from where I live. His house was going to be Ed Gein's house, excuse me, who lived in Plainfield, which is, like I said, 2 hours away from me. His house was going to be turned into a museum, but it
Oh God.
was mysteriously burned down. And no
Really?
one knows who did it.
Yeah, that's residents that who wants
Mm.
such a museum, you know,
Yeah, why would you? And his gravestone, by the way, is in the city hall of Plainfield because people would go to his gravestone, chip off parts of it, and sell it on eBay.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, there is a macabre tourism to it. I mean,
Mm.
we were in New York about 2, 3 months. Well, it was 2 months ago actually, and obviously being from Liverpool, I said I want to see the Dakota building where Lennon lived and was murdered and stuff.
Yeah, right, right.
And it was only when I was there, as we were approaching it, I thought this isn't right. I'm going
Mm.
to see the site of a murder. What am I doing?
Yeah, yeah,
And we got to the corner of that intersection,
yeah.
and we didn't cross. I was like, it doesn't fit. I mean, the building's great anyway because it was obviously where Rosemary's Baby was shot. So
Right.
we took photos of the building because it's beautiful architecture, and
Yeah.
like the guy who built it has got something to do with the occult as well. Like
Yep.
you know, one of the floors is made of sheer sterling silver.
Absolutely.
And you know, and it's all packed with mud from Central Park and stuff like that. It's very, very strange building.
Very strange
Um,
building.
but there was people getting the photo took in the archway of where Lennon was murdered,
Was
and there was
murdered.
just something a little. And I don't know, you know, without sounding
Mm.
like an idiot, it was like, I mean, John Lennon. There's a thing when you live in Liverpool, you know,
Mhm. Yeah,
people either love or hate the Beatles if you're from Liverpool. I love the Beatles,
sure.
but therefore, if you do love the Beatles, you wrestle with the fact that you live no more than 5 miles away from where they all lived and where they all
Mhm.
practiced.
Mhm.
You know, so do you feel a bit more like when I seen this guy getting a photo took in the arch?
Mhm.
I felt a bit angry, you know, a bit
Sure.
like not like a family member, but you know, like
Y
I don't know.
Yeah, you're disgracing something,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was a weird one, but it was also one of the hottest days in New York. So yeah, I was like, I'm really like, if I threw a punch, I'd just land on my back. So let's just walk away.
Yeah.
Um,
I can tell we're mates, Kev, because we have a lot of things we can. I would love to come over to Liverpool. I've never been over into Europe. Maybe who knows? I can come over there sometime. You can be my guy. You can come over to the States. I live in a small town called Spring Green, Wisconsin, where Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't know if you've heard of him.
the
Uh,
Plane Man.
yes, yeah, not the
Yeah.
plane man. The architect.
Oh, okay.
So he was a huge architect. He built some of the most grandiose and innovative buildings all over the world. And his mansion is like, which is haunted, by the way, is
Okay.
like a quarter of a mile down the road. And it's just this gorgeous. I'm in this gorgeous area. So hey, you knows, right?
Well, you never know. I mean, we took in it was a cruise we went on. So we done Miami, we done South Carolina, we
There
done
you
New
go.
York. We done quite a few places, and it was it was first time in the States, and I was a big lover of it. And that wasn't what I expected, to be honest.
Hmm,
You have mind you, I had the same thing with London. I I I despise London when I'm not in it. I despise it, and I will
really,
do anything to stay away from it. But when I'm
really.
in it, I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a weird thing. If you get me there, I'm fine and I'm in my element. But
yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of traveling there makes me blood go cold.
I know. I'm fascinated with Europe. I love European history. I'm a big history buff. I mean, you guys have furniture in Europe older than the entire United States of America. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like
It's
the
funny.
history. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
an interesting fact is the American War of Independence ended in Liverpool.
Oh,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, because it was the last at war ship or something that was docked, would signal the end of the war or something similar.
That's right.
And it docked at Liverpool, and
Yeah.
therefore that's caused the end of that war. But there was, interestingly as well, which I didn't realize, which isn't, we're quite, there's an interesting thing, because what we did notice, we went to South Carolina, and there was an open day for a museum there, and we went in, and there was a lot of within this particular museum, there was a lot of statues towards general this and general that, general that, and they seemed that there was a rather uncomfortable proudness about the owning of slaves down there.
Yes.
Like there was no mention of like which is obviously wrong. It was just very proud. Within this museum, so there's a touch of leniency because it's a historical thing, but you make a reference like in Liverpool, we were pivotal in the slave trade. We were a pivotal port, but there's an international museum to slavery there. There's we make references if somebody's made money off slaves. There's a plaque which references, be aware this individual made his money off the back of selling individuals. We reference the past. You know what I mean? So we don't necessarily tear down a statue. We leave it up to educate. And make let it be known he made money to the city. He made the city rich, but he done it off the back of selling people.
Absolutely.
So there's an education there. If you can't remove history and whitewash it, literally.
No, you can't. You can't. And that's the biggest debate right now here in the States is removing all the Confederate statues, and putting up statues of great slave leaders trying to help, and people are trying to help. And believe it or not, just before this is we could have a political podcast, right? But but believe it or not, there are still people in the South, and I'm not kidding you, who believe they won the Civil War and will debate you every chance they get.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Well, one thing, this is another thing that blew my mind. I normally take walks around Liverpool because during the World War II, we were hit. We were the second most bombed city outside of London.
Right.
And there's loads of there's a place just down the road called the Bombed Out Church, and it's a gutted church. It's almost like a cathedral, but it's got no innards, and it's beautiful, and it's a monument to the horrors of war, really. But much further on towards the docks, what I didn't realize, there was a very small plaque, and it's kept there for historical reasons, obviously. But in this particular old house, it's a huge old mansion house, a seafarer's merchant's house. There's a plaque that says this house. I think there might even be a Confederate flag on it, like very small, obviously. But it says they used to hold balls at this house to support the South in the Civil War. And the reason for it being because Liverpool made so much money in slavery, they wanted to ensure it survived.
Sure.
It's horrific.
It's horrific.
From a historical point of view, it's fascinating to stumble upon such a thing.
Right.
But it blows your mind that not going back 200 years, what went on? Not even that, It's amazing. But anyway, this is spooky.
So scary. Yeah. People are going, when are you getting into the spooky stuff? Okay, we will get to the spooky stuff, but I love hearing history and I love that and everything. So let's get right to the spooky stuff, because this is something I didn't know Kev watched, but I watched as an American and could not believe this actually happened. So let's talk about Ghostwatch. So Ghostwatch, if you don't know about this, please check it out, my spooky friends. And I'm gonna get Kev's little story here, which is absolutely hilarious. And then I want to get his feelings on this because this is unbelievable. So A banned BB show, it was called Ghost Watch, left traumatized viewers in tears and unable to sleep for months. More than 30,000 people, frightened viewers, complained about the terrifying show when it was first broadcast 30 years ago. So I'm going to give you a brief idea, my spooky friends, and then Kev's going to talk about his experiences with this. And they're both out of this world. It's great. It's hilarious and serious at the same time. So this kind of fits our podcast, I guess. So it is Halloween night, and a nation is about to be traumatized by one of the scariest shows ever, broadcast on British TV at, this is hilarious, 9:25 p.m. on Saturday, October 3rd, 31st, 1992. Ghostwatch, now this is a mockumentary, investigating reports of a poltergeist in the most haunted house in Britain, was shown for the first time on BBC. So it was billed as a drama, but cleverly put together like it was a live broadcast TV documentary. So this was the way they put it together, is it looked like it was happening in real time. In the 90s, we don't look, in the 90s, that was a big deal. Here, we're like, yeah, whatever. And what added to the apparent authenticity is the one-off show was also that it has 4 presenters. Michael Parkinson, I don't know who that is. Sarah Green, again, don't know who that is, but you can help me. Her husband, Mike Smith, and Greg Charles were all, of course, household names playing themselves. So this is really funny. So it's basically if they took the American version of the top journalists, put them in this documentary, did not tell you it was a mockumentary, and then just kind of just went through it and just was like, this is real, without really giving away it's not real. So just a little bit of things about it was the live ghost investigation centered about 2 young girls, Kim and Suzanne Early, being haunted by a terrifying spook called Pipes, a name who still sends shivers down the spine of people, which is, that's fascinating to me. And he was in their West London home. The ghoul was so called because the children heard noises in the house, and their mom said it was just the pipes. So 30 years. So this is 1992. So this has been over 30 years, and people are still talking about this. And this is, before I get to your experience, Kev, somebody said this. This is great. I believe it's a woman's name. If it isn't, I apologize. Hawk Siona said, worst thing I ever watched. Which made it worse was they said it was poltergeist targeted teenage girls, which we were at the time. So I guess it is a girl. And she also said her sisters or somebody, I guess her friend said, this Karen Pierce posted, I remember watching this about the poltergeist called Pipes, and I was crying my eyes out. I was so scared. I was 10 years old, and I also remember my dad shouting at me for getting so upset, saying excuse me, bloody real, calm down. So that's in an English accent. Makes more sense. So just a little thing about this, please check it out. I believe it's on YouTube. Also, they do sell it on a DVD. I saw it off a DVD. Me and my friend, we watched it a couple Halloweens ago, and I was blown away, Kev. And then when they're going through everything and they're showing these things, so in this mockumentary documentary, they will show pipes. So they will show this entity, and then the people will get on and be like, "Did you see that? Did you see that in the corner?
Yeah.
Did you see that?" And then they'll be like, then you'll hear bang, 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 and they'll be like, "Oh, okay," and then people will rush in. Okay, so what, and all this stuff, and it made it look so real that for 1992 is amazing. So Kev, tell me about your experience. You were what, 13 when you
I was
saw this?
13, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, you made a good reference in the notes that you sent me over. It genuinely was the equivalent from an English perspective of the War of the Worlds in
Yes.
terms of the radio broadcast, especially if you missed the beginning, which I did. I missed the first 5 minutes. If you were tuning in for it, you would have heard the commentator say, and now a drama, bump.
Yes.
But if you missed that part and you went right into it, now Craig Charles is from Red Dwarf. He plays Lister in Red Dwarf. Is it not Lister? He plays one of them in Red Dwarf, anyway. But Michael Parkinson it's hard to describe just how revered of an interviewer Michael Parkinson is in the UK. Like for example, you were known as for example, Billy Connolly, the comedian.
Yeah.
He was made by being interviewed on Michael Parkinson's show. He literally went from selling like 300-seater rooms. He appeared on Parkinson, which was the name of his chat show, and he was selling arenas out overnight.
Wow.
He had that much strength. I mean, at the time, there was no satellite TV. There was 4 channels, so everybody watched Parkinson. So it was hosted by Michael Parkinson as Michael Parkinson. Sarah Green and her husband Mike Smith, they were the real names. You know, they were both acting as themselves. Craig Charles is a Scouser like myself, and he was acting as himself. And the way they done it was they had a base camp in a studio, which was hosted by Parkinson. And Michael Parkinson would sit there, and he had allegedly a parapsychologist, a researcher, a historian, and they would go live to the house where Sarah Green and Mike Smith would be, and Craig Charles would be outside. And outside they had like the house cordoned off, and the neighbors and people of the neighborhood were allegedly behind these cordons. And he was interviewing them, saying, "What have you heard about the house?" And they'd be saying like, "Oh, we've heard loads of stuff." It looked so genuine, it was untrue.
Yes.
It looked like a genuine, especially because these are real people. You know, it wasn't, "Oh, that's Sarah Green. Why are people calling her Mandy?" No, it was Sarah Green.
Yeah.
And when scary things would happen, she would show genuine concern for her husband and would be saying back to studio, "That's my husband in there." You know, so there was an added element of reality. I was 13 at the time, and there was no one else in the house. Because
so Kev, do me a favor. Paint me a picture. You're a 13-year-old boy in an empty house.
Yeah. Lights out, because I love Halloween. So all the lights out, just me cross-legged watching this on TV. And there's a great, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Remember this drama was banned by the BBC. And the reason why it was banned was because there was a couple of suicides that took place.
Right.
People were so affected by it. They thought they were being haunted by pipes. They actually killed themselves, and there was lawsuits galore going in against the BBC. So they vowed to never air it again. So I'm sat there anyway, and it would do things like it would pan around the girl's room, and you'd see someone stood in the corner, and they'd pan back, and they'd be gone. And as a 13-year-old, I'd be like, "No, I seen it. I seen it." And they'd go to Michael Parkinson in the studio, and they'd say, "Can we review that footage?" We're getting people phoning in and saying someone was in the corner. And when they'd review the footage, nothing to be there. So then, but you then yourself are saying, "No, I seen it."
Right.
And then it flashed up. I thought, is this real, or is this just all fake for Halloween? And then it flashed up a telephone number, and I still remember the number. It was 08. Oh, what was it? I think it was 0800 011 0101 or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought, you know what? I'm going to ring it. And if someone answers, it's genuine. And if they don't, it's not. And they were taking calls allegedly live on air, you know, like people would be saying like, "Oh, something's just moved in the house," and stuff like this. So I rung it, and it was engaged. And when I got that engaged tone, my stomach dropped, because I thought, it's genuine. It's not like a dead line, or it's not like, if you're calling the number from Ghostwatch, please know it's a drama. You know, it was engaged. People were trying to get through.
Oh, wow.
So you was like, "Oh my God, this is genuine." And then obviously it builds up to a crescendo, and you start seeing these people who you know, and like you've seen them in their real lives, acting as themselves. Like Craig Charles was getting worried for Sarah Green in the house, and he's showing genuine. He's saying to like the cameramen, he's saying, "No, we need to stop messing around now. She's in danger." You know, they were really, really portraying it so well. It let itself down towards the end when I've watched it back in hindsight, because allegedly the spirit then possesses Michael Parkinson, and that's when it jumped the shark.
Yeah.
But up to that point, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. But also, what you've got to bear in mind is, I would go as far as to say, and I mean this, without Ghostwatch, there's no Zach Bagans.
Yes.
Because the Ghostwatch was the foundation. The way they done it, it was the foundation for Most Haunted in the UK, with Yvette Fielding and her crew that went out. And Most Haunted was so big, they even done a skit of it on Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Like it took over the States for a while, and then Zach Bagans and the likes watched this and thought, "Oh, there's money to be made here. Let's go out investigating as ghosts." Sorry, let's go out investigating ghosts.
Yeah.
And it all stems from Ghostwatch. It's the seed which launched 1,000 careers.
Absolutely. This one was like, in the States, we have Destination Fear. I think that's still on. We have, oh my God, Ghost Hunters. We have, you name, there is a channel, numerous channels that, like Paraflix, it's called, which is dedicated to people investigate. And I've interviewed paranormal investigators on the show, and they're like, yeah, I kind of brought this up a little bit, and they did not know what it was, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people in the States are kind of like, huh? But I'm telling you, it was, when I watched it from an American perspective, I was like, huh, this is pretty smart, And then I thought, wait a minute, that's a real number.
Yeah. And the thing is, from an
so,
American perspective, if you don't know the gravitas that Michael Parkinson had,
yeah.
it would be the equivalent of, I mean, you'd have to tell me, who would be such a respected American TV pundit that if they've done this, if they played themselves in such a role.
So for us would be a guy named Dan Rather. He was on
Okay.
60 Minutes. If you've heard of 60 Minutes, yeah. So when Dan Rather was on, it was like he could do no wrong. Like, if he told you to drink milk 10 times a day, that it's going to help you be a better person, you're drinking milk 10 times a day. So I think it's kind of, and he would interview everybody. He would interview terrorists, he would interview rock stars, he would interview actors, actresses, presidents. You know what I'm saying? Just like
Yes.
Gentleman Parkinson. If he came on there and he said, "Oh my God, there's a ghost in here," people would be like, "Oh my God, there's a ghost there."
But this is it. And they also had, like, even within the studio setup, which was obviously away from the alleged haunted house, they had even that dynamic perfect. They had, like, a believer versus a skeptic. They had them arguing within the studio, like, as in, this is all nonsense compared to,
Right.
well, how do you explain that? You believed every second of what you were watching. And interestingly, it's such an interesting, the whole dynamic's so interesting, is that, like, it's based on the Enfield haunting, Janet, and I forget the surname now. The Hodgsons, the Janice Hodgson from the Enfield haunting.
Yeah.
That's the entire source of it is taken more or less verbatim from the house. That story's lifted from the house and placed in Ghostwatch. And they're doing an alleged review because it's a single mother. It's, the same sort of setup. There's two girls involved. It's meant to be a poltergeist powered from the pubescent energy of the girls. So it's a similar setup to how the Enfield case played out. But it's hard to say. I mean, I have this theory. This is going a bit abstract now, but I have this theory that somebody much more intelligent than I could definitely write a book and find a thread between Big Brother, the reality TV show, and Donald Trump becoming president. There's a line there through what we found acceptable before, when we started accepting, like, average, people becoming celebrities, when this became a thing, when you didn't need a talent to become famous. In the 60s, you needed to be good at music, singing, dancing, acting. in the 90s, 2010s, you needed to be an idiot. You know, you needed to want your 5 minutes of fame, and people made careers out of it. And there's a line that goes direct through to Trump that is inevitable. And I think this is what, you know, Ghost Watch, there's no Zach Bagans without Ghost Watch. There's no
Absolutely.
Most Haunted without Ghost Watch.
Absolutely.
It's the seed which started it all.
And I think what did this too, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cav, is in Europe, especially in the UK, there is so many, how do I say, like, Enfield Poltergeist is one of the most famous poltergeists. I mean, they did a movie about it, Conjuring 3, I believe, or Conjuring 2. I can't remember which one. But anyway, when I haven't done, I would love if we could do something like this together, because you could give your point a little bit more than me. But when I've listened to podcasts of that, and just listen to how people view it, then like in the States, we're more about, how do I say, demons. We're more about possession. So we're more about exorcisms. We're more about, okay, and people take that seriously. Okay. And I think if someone would do an exorcism show, which kind of they've done a number of movies. And in fact, the Exorcist movie in the 70s, people left the movie theater. People got physically sick, even though it was not real. But that's how it meant. And like Ghostwatch, to me, I think the Enfield Poltergeist and showing those two girls and they're being beat up and they're being thrown around, and everyone's like, oh my God, how do we help this family? And what do we do? And then kind of told it's kind of fake. Like the little girl maybe had some mental issues or some mental challenges, and she did this on purpose. Do you think that what made Ghostwatch real for you as a small child? I don't know if you even heard of the Enfield Poltergeist at that time.
I did at that time. I mean, to be honest, as I say, I was 13 at the time, and at that time, I was already about 8 years into my paranormal education. So
right.
I knew about Enfield. I didn't realize it was based on Enfield, because in my mind, I'm watching a real thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, you just jogged me memory. I do recall because I was in the house alone whilst watching it. Every say 20 minutes or so, I had to swap channels 5 minutes just to calm myself down, just to get a bit of like normality in my head, because and that if anything, that proves just how powerful a show it was, and it proves just how it kind of validates these 30,000 complaints. But it also is interesting when you talk up to people who say, oh, I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in the paranormal. Really? Well, the BBC had to ban a show because they received that many complaints about people being terrified about the paranormal.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This is kind of a side note. Have you ever, this has happened to me. Have you ever been researching something or been somewhere where you felt something, like something that you had to sleep with the lights on that night because you were just freaked out about and you can't describe what it was, but it just got to your soul almost.
Yes. Within the last 4 months, that's happened to me. So basically, where I'm recording this now is just in the back bedroom of where we live. But I've got a studio in Renshaw Street, which is in Liverpool city centre. Now it's above a music shop, and there's another thing which I found out last week which blew my mind. But anyway, in this room, I made it soundproof. So basically, as you know, you want your audio quality to be good. So you got curtains on the walls, and you're dampening the acoustics. And the way the room was, it's only a very small room, but the way the room's set out is there's like, as you open the door, there's a very small kind of vestibule area. And then it leads into the open square, which is the room. So across that vestibule, I put a curtain. So if you walk into the room whilst I'm recording, you'll just see that curtain, and you'd have to pop your head behind the curtain to say anything. Anyway, I was recording an episode of The Dark Paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
And this particular story, now I'm a Roman Catholic by birth,
Okay.
not through choice. No, I'm very a lapsed Catholic,
Okay.
to put
All
it
right.
lightly.
Yeah.
I'm non-practicing,
Sure.
but if somebody asked me, I'd say I'm a Roman Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And not just because we're everyone in Liverpool's Irish. That's just fact.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
so my nan's Irish, my granddad's Irish, blah blah blah, and we're all Roman Catholics. Anyway, I had an email from a priest, or should I say an ex-priest, or should I say, it turns out I didn't know this word, a laicized priest.
Hmm.
Now, it turns out he wrote this fantastic email, and a lot of the times when people send in an email with their experience in, there's a lot of there was footsteps upstairs, there was
Mm-hmm.
bangings of the doors, there was slam.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of poltergeistal
Yeah.
activity.
Right.
This had none of that. It
Oh.
was so subtle. It was unbelievable. Anyway, he was basically nominated by his bishop for his diocese to take over. Each Catholic diocese needs to have at least one exorcist. And their exorcist in their diocese was retiring. So his bishop nominated him to
Mm-hmm.
take the place of the exorcist. So he had to go to Rome. He had to do some formal training.
Yeah.
And he'd come back and he said it was quite there was no cause for it, really. It was kind of, he viewed it as just a box ticking exercise.
Sure.
Anyway, he then got in touch with a woman who said, can you come and bless the house? Which she often gets, where he as a priest said he'd often get.
Sure.
Requests for house blessings, things are going on.
Yeah.
When he turned up, this woman was acting really strange and he wasn't sure. And he thought she was being abused by the partner.
Mm.
And he left anyway. And as he's walking down the street, the partner runs after him and the partner's being attacked by her.
Oh.
And the partner says, she's there's something in her. She needs help. So he goes back and pays her a visit, and he's convinced then, he can tell in her eyes, she's oppressed. She knows, I think she mentioned something. I can't even recall what it was because I'm getting to the point I'm getting to, as opposed to regaling this story. Long story short, he goes to the bishop to ask for permission to do an exorcism. The bishop denies it and says a confession is as good as an exorcism. And he argues the toss. Why have you put me through the exorcism training then? Then the bishop outright, it's more or less a paper, it's a admin exercise. He basically says, I can't authorize an exorcism without her having confession.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, well, I'm not going to get her in a confessional booth. But he said, well, will you give her one more try? So he does. He invites her around to the priest's house or the parochial home for tea. And she turns up, he hears the gate go. She's walking up the thing with a pram. She's got a youngster with her, about maybe 4 months old, whatever.
Yeah.
And she comes in, she sits down, all nice as pie. He goes, do you want a cup of tea? Yeah, all good. Goes in, makes a cup of tea, comes in with a tray with some biscuits on and stuff like that. And as he looks up, she's holding the baby above her head, above his glass coffee table, and smiling at the priest and saying, what would you do? Sort of thing. What are you going to do? Can you stop me? Blah, blah, blah. He panics that much, he drops the tray. And then when he's picking the stuff up, she's back to herself and she's putting the baby back in the pram. And she's like, are you okay, Father? What's wrong? What's happened? And she's completely lost it. He goes, as in she's back to normal. She's lost the oppression, if you will. So he then returns to the bishop and says, we are not getting her in a confessional booth. And the bishop says, my hands are tied. You can't do it without. So he says, I can't do it then. I can't, you give me a job I can't do. And I want to give him notice, sort of thing. So only the Pope can approve you being laicized, apparently. So I'm learning all this through reading the letter, or reading the email even. So the Pope, the bishop writes a full explanation as to what's gone on. The bishop immediately grants them being laicized, which is suspicious in itself. It's kind of no questions asked. Anyway, so he's but the weird thing is, apparently once a priest, always a priest. It's not like if he wanted to become a priest again, he has to go through the training again. He could literally just make a phone call and say, "Put me back on," and he's on. And he can also perform certain, like last rites in an emergency and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I'm halfway through this story, I'm, as I say, as you've heard, like I do it in a different sort of accent, a little bit more serious,
Yeah, right.
a little bit more well spoken. I'm
Yeah.
really concentrating on what I'm doing. I become convinced that someone stood behind that curtain that separates my recording room to the door. So much so to the point that I stop recording, I take my earphones off and I say hello like 3 times.
Sure.
Then I put my headphones back on. I start recording again. Then I hear my name. Then I take my headphones off and I'm like, someone's definitely behind that curtain. So like on a cartoon,
Yeah.
I've got my umbrella and I'm poking the curtain from like my seating position.
Yeah. I gotcha.
But honest to God, something was in that room. It's not left me now, even now. And I've spoke about this numerous times on numerous versions of me numerous shows, that this was something that there was something in that room.
Yeah.
Then as I was telling that story, as I was, but the thing is, I could look at the rational point of it. For example, when I say a good friend of mine, a man that I know who had a very successful podcast as a skeptic. He once said he was writing an autobiography about a very famous comedian.
Yeah.
And he said, whilst he was up late one night about 2 a.m, burning the midnight oil, working through this, he became convinced he was in the room with him. But as a skeptic, he believes it was because he was so enraptured in that person's life that he just felt part of him.
Sure.
But the thing is, the story that was sent in by this priest was only 6 pages of A4. I'm not involved in this person's life. I've not spent months researching the ins and outs of a duck's backside about him. So when it was, do you know what, right? When people describe, and it's strange when you experience something that you've only read about people trying to describe.
Right.
And when people describe like something coming down like a blanket, it was like that. It was like that. There was an ominous feeling that just dropped, an all present feeling. It's really hard to describe.
Yes, it is.
But it was like,
I understand.
It was like I instantly felt the need to be backed up into a corner.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a room that's about 10 foot by 10 foot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a big room.
Yeah.
It was so weird, so bizarre. Middle of the day, just totally bizarre. So in answer to your question, and a completely long-winded way about going.
No, I love it.
Yes, and it was then, and it was just, there was something there. There was something definitely there. And I'm not a fool. Do you know what I mean? I'm not like I'm, for example, right now, I'm alone in our house. My partner's in the Middle East, and I'm with the cat. And I will be like, my partner doesn't allow me to have a Ouija board in the house because she says I'm so suggestible. So I will jump at my own shadow. I jumped at a coat before and that I'd hung up in the belief someone was in the house. So I am suggestible. So,
I hear you.
But
I hear you.
There's a world of difference between jumping and going, oh my God, it's all right, and that. And even now when I'm talking about it now, I'm getting that,
Yeah, you're getting that hairs kind of, goosebumps, whatever you want to say. Hairs kind of,
yeah. I don't know what it is.
That's unbelievable, because I was going to ask you if you've ever screamed like a little girl. Because I have
many.
I have. But and I'm not a big guy, but I'm a pretty big guy. And when people see me and I tell them that, they always laugh at me, and they're always like, "You're scared of that?" Like one time, like I got scared. I went, "Ah!" like that, and my wife was like, "Huh?" She just like looked at me like, "What are you doing?" And that's funny that you mentioned that. Is about exorcisms. Just really quick before we wrap up here, which, by the way, I could talk to you for hours, Kev. You're awesome.
Oh, definitely.
I
Yeah.
love it. So I was doing a research on Anna Eklund. It was this exorcism, and she was from like in her 20s to her 40s.
Yeah.
Demonic voices, felt like she was just being, just totally being possessed by demons. And then when the priest finally exorcised her, they took 3 weeks,
Mm.
to
Yeah.
exorcise her. And when the priest and the nuns and everybody, when they're talking about things, you're like, why would they make that up? Maybe okay, to get some more. I don't, but still okay, whatever. You believe what you want to believe. But the point was, like, she would be throwing up buckets of vomit, and she'd be crawling the walls, and she'd be speaking in old Latin and all this stuff. And I'm like, holy. So when I'm doing this, right, I'm doing some research on exorcism. I'm watching videos and I'm watching this to try to, get a feel for this. I get up, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I hear footsteps coming down. And usually it's my wife to say, honey, get to bed, it's late. But she doesn't do it all the time, especially on weekends. And I got a full house here, by the way. I got 2 kids, 2 cats, a dog, and a wife. So
Wow.
I'm a full boat.
Yeah.
Anyway, and sometimes the kids get up and whatever. But I swear to God, Kev, I'm sitting there and my office is right next to the steps, and I hear footsteps coming down. And I'm like, well, okay. It's probably the wife, probably the kids telling me to come to bed or whatever like that. But they usually don't care about dad. They're like, yeah, whatever, dad, do whatever you want. So I'm sitting there and doing my research, and all of a sudden I have carpeted near my door and in my basement, and I hear the footsteps on the carpet, and it stops right in front of my door. And for just like you, I didn't think it was my wife. I didn't think it was the dog. I didn't think it was the cats. I didn't think it was kids. No, I thought there was something, if I opened that door, was going to hurt me. And I just had this really bad feeling. I just felt like dread. And I was like, so I closed my laptop. I turned everything off, but it just stopped my research. And I thought, oh, I got a chair here. I can sleep in the chair.
Yeah.
And then a part of me goes, you got to know what behind that door is. You have to open that door. Open that door, John. And I come right close to the door. I put my hand on the doorknob, and I'm about to open the door. And again, something stopped me and just stopped me. And then I swear to God, I heard the footsteps walk away.
Wow.
And I just sat down there in my room, and you could not convince me there wasn't something behind that door waiting for me to come out and do something. I swear on that. So, I eventually I turn on all the lights downstairs. I like go up. I had all the kitchen lights. I had every little damn light in the house you could turn on, right? And I go to bed, and then my wife wakes up the next morning, and I turned everything off. My wife like, what the? And I'd explain to her, but I like you, I was like, should I open that door, or should I? I'm poking this curtain. Should I open? And something was telling me, don't do that. Do not do that. So, man, I feel for you. It's still like me. Right now, I'm like feeling like you. I'm feeling like, ugh. It's that weird feeling you get, right?
Yeah.
That was just terrible. So, to wrap up here, I have to ask this question. Do you think this Ghost Watch would ever come on again? And would you think it would fool people this time?
I think it would need to be a new medium now. I think,
Okay.
you
Like
know,
what?
I'm, you know, I think you'd need to get everyone involved. And I mean the watchers, the listeners.
Mhm.
Someone much more intelligent than I would have to come up with some way
Sure.
of making people, because the thing with it is it worked because people bought into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if you had a way of making people buy in to what was going on, not even that they believed, just that they couldn't explain it,
right.
then you've got them in the palm of your hand, sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it from a fake point of view, there's the argument that you could, I'd be interested to see, for example, when Most Haunted did start, their very first Most Haunted live mirrored the concept of Ghostwatch. It was done identical. They had a studio, they had an outside broadcast team, and this was before they got into the controversy around maybe things were being faked and stuff like that. And all it was, and it was better for it, they would have like Yvette Fielding sat in a room in this castle for 20 minutes on her own, just with a camera. And they would keep going back to her, and she'd be like, I'm here knocking all around me. And it was terrifying. They didn't need anything flying through the air. They didn't need, it was like, it was just so well done. But could it be done today? It would take some doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure what that would be. But interestingly, going back to what you're talking about when you're saying about, well, my story initially with the Catholic priest, and yours when you're talking about Anna Eklund and feeling somebody coming to your door. There's a piece on one of the documentaries about The Exorcist where the guy who plays the young priest, I can't recall his name now, but he's getting interviewed off camera, and he says it was because it was filmed in the Jesuit quarters.
Yeah.
A priest comes up to him and says, have you ever heard of intervention? I'm sure it's intervention. He says, have you ever heard of intervention? And this actor says no. And he says, when you try and expose the devil for the fraudster that he is, he will always try and find a way to stop you. And he says he then placed, I think it was a medal of St. Christopher in his hand and said, be careful, you need to watch yourself because you're playing with fire.
Right.
And he said 2 days later, he was walking through the Jesuit quarters. He said, and it's either side of him was alcoves, little prayer vestibules and stuff. And one of them had a laid out coffin. And when he went in, it was that priest who'd given the St. Christopher.
Wow.
And it's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know, because they always say, don't they, the greatest trick the devil pulls is to let you think he doesn't exist. Therefore, if you try and show people he exists, he tries to find a way to stop you.
Absolutely.
And because I've seen that long before I'd read this email from this priest,
I'm
reading this out, it was just such a bizarre sensation. My girlfriend has there's a word called qualia, which means there is no word to describe it. That's what qualia means. So when someone says it has a certain qualia, it means something I can't describe. And that's what this was. It had a certain qualia. It was something I couldn't put into words.
Yeah.
But and for someone who's been doing paranormal podcasting for like 6 years now, and someone who's been into the paranormal for over 30 years, I'm normally pretty good to describe a scary feeling.
Sure.
This was a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kev, again, like I said, I can talk to you for hours. I mean, you're amazing. We didn't even get to what I really wanted to talk about of some of the 5 spookiest places. And if you would be generous to come back on my show, that would be great sometime.
Anytime.
Love to have you on. And if you want to hear my stories, like I said, I'll gladly be on your show. So
I sure do. I'll sort that out with you, especially about the 2. Because what I'll do with the, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but with the Deadly Countdown, with that being very similar to the Dark Paranormal in terms of serious tone and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll get you on that in a serious capacity to do a mid-season thing.
That'd be great.
I'll have a think on that. But yeah,
that would be great. That would be great. So again, check Kev out with we need to talk. I always say we need to talk about ghosts. You tell it better.
That's right. We need to talk about ghosts. Yeah.
Oh, it is. I don't know why that sounds weird in my head. And Dark Paranormal, and the other one, your other
Deadly
podcast?
Countdown's the newest one. Yeah.
Yes,
but that's true crime. So
that's true crime. Well, still, my spooky friends love all that stuff. So check him out and all that. I will put Kev and all his things in the links of the episode, as well as all my social media sites, so you can check him out and enjoy like I enjoy his take on a lot of different things, and you're awesome. You guys love it, absolutely love it. So we do two things when we wind up the show. I don't know if you have a ghost in your house, but this is what we say. We say hi to your ghost. So we say, hello, ghost. Because,
Oh, nice one for that. Now you know I'm alone for the next
week. And then we say, stay spooky. So stay spooky, Kev.
You too, mate. Take
Love
care.
having you on. We will talk later.
Indeed we shall. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.